It'll be very, very similar. I can't imagine he'll drift too far away from what worked last season. Part of me does wonder whether we slightly overachieved last year.
Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries channel. Today we are chatting to James Joan, our expert on all things West Ham. Just before we get into the video, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel. We've got loads of Premier League analysis and building up to this brilliant new season. But James, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
No, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, James. But just before we get into the podcast as well, tell us about the brilliant work that you do for the We Are West Ham podcast.
Well, we've been around as a podcast for about just over a year. We were originally the West Ham show on Love Sport Radio before COVID struck and ruined all of our dreams. But we made the decision to just right, if we're not on the radio, we might as well do a podcast, and ever since then we've sort of grown, pretty well. We've partnered with Betway, West Ham's shirt sponsors, and raised 12, I think about 12 grand for charity last year with Betway, doing some charity bets with them throughout the season, which is great. And the fact that we're attracting companies like Betway to partner with us and that, so we're doing all right. I think it's just a light-hearted West Ham moan every week, moaning not recently, but normally it would be a moan. But the last 9 months have been quite kind to us.
Well, yeah, with today's discussion, you mentioned that maybe historically it was a bit of moaning, but last season, absolutely brilliant. I mean, how pleased were you with the performances of the team?
I mean, it's difficult to put it into words, to be honest. The only sad thing about it was that the fans weren't there to see it. It literally did come out of the blue. Like, no one expected us to put a season like that together. We just scraped safety the season before. And everyone just thought, well, this is going to be another year of just mediocrity, maybe a relegation battle. If not, it's going to be top end of the bottom half of the table. And, everyone was still relatively underwhelmed with David Moyes' return. So the feeling wasn't good going into last year. And then when you're fourth going into April and you start looking at it going, oh, hang on, what's going on here? And, we didn't get fourth, we finished sixth, but it was the most incredible season for us, and just really wish we could have been there to see it. Obviously, we were there on the final day of the season to clap the players and congratulate them and thank them for putting smiles on our faces when we desperately needed it most, obviously given COVID and all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, it did seem like the West Ham collective just came together to deliver you something brilliant for what has been a terrible time for many. On last season then, just quickly, is there a game or a standout moment that really sticks with you about how brilliant that season was?
There are a few. The first game where everyone kind of sat back and went, hang on, we might mean business here, was when we went to Leicester in September and we won 3-0 at King Power. And we just completely outplayed Leicester that day. And then the 3-0 comeback at Tottenham, Lanzini's last minute equaliser, will always go down in history at West Ham. But I can't remember one performance where it was, well, that was a terrible performance, barring the opening day defeat to Newcastle. Everything else went very well, and it all stands out for me. Even when we got beat at Stamford Bridge 3-0, everyone went, that wasn't a 3-0 defeat. If anything, we've done enough there to get to win 3-0 ourselves. It all stands out for me. There isn't really a moment where I can look back and say that was the highlight of the season.
So let's talk about tactics, because some people might not be familiar with the team, the way that the team play. So can we talk about how you expect the team to be deployed in the upcoming season? Because, there's been questions of 5 at the back, 4 at the back. But most importantly, has there been any big changes in pre-season?
There's not been any big changes that we can see. It's still a little bit up in the air as to whether Moyes will revert back to the 5-4-1 that he started last season with. or stick with the 4-2-3-1. I think it all depends on whether he can either bring Lingard back, which is kind of up in the air at the moment, or whether he trusts one of the players already in the squad to play that role. We can bring someone else in. No one really knows how he's going to start the season, and it all does depend on the business that he can do between now and the end of the window. But as we saw last season, he did sort of consistently switch between the two systems, and he got the best out of the team. It didn't really matter what he played; he still got the best out of the players on the day. So either one of those systems are going to be part of the season next year. He's played both in pre-season, and so far, although it doesn't mean anything, we're unbeaten in pre-season. We've been playing pretty well. So, but that doesn't really mean much.
Well, off air, you did tell me about another pre-season that you went unbeaten. I don't know if you want to talk about that, or should we continue with the tactics talk?
Well, I mean, I don't mind talking about it. The last time West Ham went, I don't think it was the last time we went unbeaten in pre-season. It was the last time I actually cared about pre-season. We went unbeaten under Avram Grant, and then we went and got relegated. And that was the last time I thought pre-season is definitely a marker as to how we're going to do.
Yeah.
But I think when you consider that we've not had a full squad this summer, Souček and Soufal have only just come back. Declan Rice is still to come back. We've had quite a weak squad, and we've got a thin squad anyway. So with a lot of youth players in there, and a little bit of tinkering in terms of new positions for some players as well. David Moyes has been playing around with some players in different positions. The signs are good when you're beating Celtic 6-2, for example. Celtic with a pretty strong team out at the same time. So I'm not going to read too much into it, but the signs are pretty good that whatever Moyes does, either system, I think he's going to do pretty well.
Well, this is the interesting thing: is how much do you read into pre-season? I'm not too much of a believer myself, apart from kind of looking at maybe some tactical tweaks and things like that. But just to kind of summarise, then, do you see it kind of being that low block, tight, between the defence midfield, and then that lightning quick counter attack? More of the same this season.
Yeah, I think so. The pace of Bowen and Mikel Antonio going forward. If we get Lingard back, then that adds a little bit extra pace going forward. But it will be the low block, regardless. And he likes to use that pace. He likes sort of hard workers. Fornals is going to be very key again. So it'll be very, very similar. I can't imagine he'll drift too far away from what worked last season.
In that number 10 position, though, you have mentioned it. Has anybody else kind of filled in there and done a pretty good job?
He's tried Lanzini there, although Lanzini is kind of playing a lot deeper, and he's sort of excelled a lot deeper towards the back end of last season when he played and during pre-season. Fornals can play there, but he's not as effective. I think he might go with Ben Rama. Ben Rama's an option because he didn't get a lot of game time at the back end of last season, and fans are crying out for him to get more game time because he's a very, very good footballer. So it could be him. But, I mean, I'd like to see Bowen there as well. I think Bowen could probably do a job. I know he's quick out on the right, but there are players in there that can play that role, not as effectively as Lingard does. As we saw last season, he was outstanding.
Yeah, he was outstanding, and we will get on to a bit of analysis on that for the moment. But another area of interest that I find is the goalkeeper situation. I think it's a fantastic signing of Areola, and I think as well as it being a loan, then you can see if he fits into the squad and everything. But it might be the right time as well. Areola himself, last season, fantastic. 4th best XG prevented with 3.3 goals prevented, only behind the likes of Pope, Martinez and Alisson. Whereas Fabianski, at his age, I don't want to be too rude about him because he's been so brilliant for West Ham, but he cost the team 1.6 goals in terms of XG prevented. Has Moyes indicated if this Areola signing is for the new number 1, or does he have the preference for Fabianski for now?
There's been no indications to what the plans are. It's caught quite a lot of people off guard, the Areola signing, because it's not a priority position. Fabianski signed a 1-year extension last year. This would be his last year. I'm pretty sure he'll probably retire. I think he's 36, 37 now. So, and he's he's a safe pair of hands in between the sticks, and I'm sure he would be again next season if he was number one. So bringing in Areola kind of surprised a lot of people. It did make a lot of people wonder whether he is going to go in and be that number one straight away. But there's been no indication, literally zero hint that it's a straight swap, or whether he might just play the European games, he might just play the cup games. I don't know, but yeah, it's anyone's guess at the moment. No one knows.
That doesn't help the Fantasy Premier League community at the moment, but they're both priced the same, and I'm not sure what to recommend in that situation there. But let's look a little bit further up the field. The team were fantastically consistent with top four data in attack and defence through the season, but the main goal getter of Antonio is so injury prone. With Allaire now gone, are you worried about the side struggling goals to score goals through the season?
No, I think there's enough goals in the side. Almost all the attackers chipped in with at least 5 or 6 goals each, minimum. Bowen, it showed that he can be in amongst the goals. Antonio hit 10 last year. He probably would have hit more if his hamstrings were a little bit more reliable. So no, I don't think there's going to be much worry in terms of goal threat. I think there's enough there, particularly from lots of Souček who will chip in 8 or 9 probably. Declan Rice loves the odd 1 or 2 as well. So there's definitely goals in that attack. And Ben Rama as well, I've already mentioned earlier. He'll score goals if he gets enough minutes. So I don't think it's a worry, but we definitely need one more striker. It has to be another striker, because you lose Antonio for 5 or 6 games and then you're worried, because Antonio is that focal point, because he will bring players into play if he's holding the ball up. And even if he's not scoring, he's creating the goals, with his movement. So it has to be another striker. Otherwise, it's Bowen up front, and that just messes everything up from a tactical point of view, I think. So if we get another striker in, then absolutely fine. Or if Antonio can stay fit for more than 6 games at a time, even better.
Yeah, well, an extended pre-season might actually help him. But with Antonio, like you said there, the data backs it up. In games that he played, he was involved in 34.5% of chances last season, 9th highest of a single player in the Premier League last season. So there is quite a reliance on him when he is in the team. But another question about Antonio, because he does attract a lot of attention from the Fantasy Premier League community, is why do you think he underperformed his XG? Season before that, he had probably one of the best XG per 90s of any player, and he's kind of matching that data. Whereas last season, he underperformed it by 3.52 goals. Was it because of the intermittent fitness, or was it other reasons? Maybe he wasn't hitting the target?
I think it's natural when the team sort of increases the amount of chances that it's making. If you compare into the season before, we weren't creating half as many chances as we were last season. And when I'm not great at maths, but I'm pretty sure that if the more chances you make, the likelihood is the more you're going to miss, but then the more you're going to score as well. So I think that plays a part. His injury problems also played a part in that. Particularly when he's injured for 6 or 5 games, and then he's back in for 2, then he's injured again for another 3, and then he's back in for 4. That played a part, but he did miss quite a lot of. There's a couple of clear-cut chances that spring to mind where on another day he would have scored. He hit the post back sort of 4 or 5 times throughout the season. So, but I think it's difficult to read too much into it or criticise him for it, because of the amount of chances that we were creating compared to the previous season. And that, although he's underperformed on his XG, we've it showed that create more chances and eventually will score more goals, even if it's not through him.
Well, looking at the attacking data of West Ham last season, fantastic underlying numbers. And yeah, maybe it's a correct theory there, because you have created a lot more chances, a lot of big chances as well. There's just a lot of love in that side, that there's a lot to love about it. Now, you've mentioned him a little bit earlier. I do want to talk about Manuel Lanzini. Is he remade as a deep-lying playmaker? Do you think he'll play much this season in that kind of role?
I think he'll be a backup in that role. I don't. I think the club were looking to get rid of him earlier on in the summer. before pre-season started. But David Moyes, I think, has had other ideas since. He did play that role once or twice last season. If I remember rightly, away at Burnley, he dominated in that position. It was the first time we'd seen him there, and everyone was like, "Oh, finally we've got a player that can fill in." Because our midfield choices are very, very slim. It's one of the big things that we've got to address this summer. And maybe David Moyes has seen it and gone, well, he's very, very, very good on the ball. And if we can get him in a position where he's going to see a lot more of the ball, then that can only benefit the team. And Lanzini, I think we've seen over the years, is a very good player. If he sees a lot of the ball, he can be very creative, works hard. So he'll play that role this season. He won't be a regular starter, definitely not. We might see him more in Europe, I think. But definitely one to look out for, I think, because for me that's a really interesting positional switch for Lanzini, and he's already come out. He came out 2 days ago and said that he was really enjoying it in pre-season. So I'm excited to see where that one goes.
Well, I can also see it in your face. You're quite excited at the prospect of him playing there. I mean, it could open up new avenues as well during games. If it's a tight affair, he might be the player to kind of unlock. And potentially, do you think that maybe he could drop deep and then maybe Souček could play a little bit further up and allow that to happen, maybe in tight games through the season?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Souček is very, very good at that and pushing forward when he needs to, and having someone like Declan Rice sort of drop deep and protect. Lanzini can do a very similar role, I think. And if you've got another player in that midfield who's different to someone like Rice or different to someone like Souček, but can play in a very similar role, but with a little bit more creativity, then I think that's only good. And I do see him being that sort of player that David Moyes will bring on if a game is tight or if we're chasing in the last 15, 20 minutes of a game to try and unlock something. And he's got that creativity to be able to do it. So yeah, I think it'll be an interesting season for Lanzini. I'm just delighted that he's not been sold because I love the man.
Yeah, he's scored some absolute screamers in the history
Absolutely
for the Hammers. But looking at one of the great things from last season was your strength from set pieces. Is this something that you think will continue this season? And if you were to play Fantasy Premier League, would you target maybe some of the players like Cresswell, like Souček, who will be involved?
I think it's something that we'll see more of from West Ham next season. I think the likes of Cresswell and Souček are very interesting propositions for fantasy players. We saw it last season, regardless of whether Cresswell was playing at left back or on the left side of a back three. He creates chances still. That's the role he's there. That's the role he's been put in there to do. And even Ogbonna, Dawson, Diop chips in with one or two from set pieces. So there are 4 or 5 players there that you would target for those set pieces. And I think it'll be the same again. I think that we are looking to bring in another centre half. So there's another, if it is a more aerial centric centre half, rather than a ball playing one, then there's going to be aerial threat all around the pitch. And so yeah, I think Cresswell and Souček are the key ones, but I wouldn't rule out for your team maybe Ogbonna as well. Might be quite an interesting one. I don't know how much he is, but he might be a bit of a differential.
Yeah, he could well be. I don't think a lot of people looked at him, but I do agree there is that just potential within the team. I do want to ask though, do you think that people will unfairly focus on Cresswell's ability from set pieces? He had the highest expected assists from set pieces last season of any player in the Premier League, but I think people see that as his only outlet because he's brilliant in open play as well, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying, and that even when he was playing as part of a back three, his role was to sort of drop in and put those deep crosses in, and he got 3 or 4 assists earlier on the season while doing that. He's very good in open play with his with his range of passing. So from dead ball situations or open play, I think Cresswell is a good option, but it all depends on the system that we play because I think they are looking at potentially bringing in another left-sided defender as cover for the time being, but we don't know how well that's going to go. But I would hold off on him until we kind of see what's going to happen in terms of the system.
And if he is deployed on that left flank, then do you think he's almost a must own, because he is fairly
Yeah,
cheap, 5.5, and he's going to be creating all through the season, isn't he?
yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, I'm pretty sure he will be. He'll start the season there, but it all depends on what happens throughout the season. But if he's playing week in week out, which I'm pretty sure he will be to begin with, then he's definitely one to look at. I mean, we saw it last season. I don't know how many goal contributions he had, but it was double figures, wasn't it? So if you look at clean sheets as well on top of that, if you look at points contributions for fantasy, so yeah, definitely look at him.
Yeah, just to add context to that, 55 minutes per chance created, kind of ridiculous numbers, 58 chances created through the season and 12 big chances created in total. So he's doing magnificent work there. And I think that's in both systems as well. He's still a very creative player, whether he is in, a back four or part of a back three slash, wing back kind of position. Let's look at, though, the run towards the end of the season. Now, I think, for me, one of the biggest indicators of a team maybe starting a season brightly is ending the previous season brightly. And West Ham did exactly that before going into last season. The project restart form of West Ham was incredible. And I think a lot of people overlooked that and didn't kind of see that as an indicator of they can go on to good things the next season. Well, if you look at West Ham's second half of the season, you guys were fourth best in the league for points, fifth best for expected points, and fourth best for XG. Only XA was kind of a little bit of a problem, expected goals against. And then the team even stayed strong into the end of the season with the final 9-game run, fifth best for points in total, and finishing well, obviously securing a Europa League spot. So does this make you believe that, with the fixtures that you have at the start of the season, that you're going to start off well, or will Europa football stretch the squad a little bit too much?
Difficult to call the start of the season. Last year we lost our first two against Newcastle and Arsenal. We've got Newcastle on the first game this season again.
Yeah, again.
I think we've lost that. I think we've lost our last 7 opening days of the season, I believe. Although the previous 6 before the last season, Newcastle was all against top 6 opposition. But we just don't tend to start well in seasons. It might be different now after last year and the success we had. But over the course of the season, squad depth is thin. I think Europa League will stretch us. Between now and the end of the season, David Moyes, for me, has got to bring in 3 or 4 players. Another striker, another central midfielder, another centre-half, at least, for us to be able to compete. There's 1 or 2 youth players coming through that will be able to cover. But, if you're playing Europa League football, plus the 2 domestic cups and trying to at least finish in the top 10 of the Premier League, then you need ample cover. And we didn't have that last year. It cost us the top 4 spot, I think. When you lose Declan Rice and Ogbonna and Antonio without decent cover, it really did cost us. And as much as I love Mark Noble, he's not the man to come in and play that Declan Rice role to the same effect. So I think I wouldn't read too much into how well we're going to do at the beginning, because West Ham are one of the most unpredictable clubs in the world. Trust me, we are. But I'd like to see us start well and then see what happens. But I think by the end of the season, I think Europa League will stretch us just because of the inexperience of playing sort of Thursday, Sunday, for 2 or 3 months. And then what happens if we get through the group, then we'll see what happens. But squad depth is very thin, and I think that might cost us.
Well, the next question I was going to ask is, without signings, are you worried about the season ahead then?
I wouldn't go as far as saying worried. Concerned. Is concerned and worried the same thing? I don't know. I'm slightly concerned that it could, if we don't bring in anyone else. I'm pretty sure we will. There are some rumours that 1 or 2 deals are close. Mateus Pereira being one of them, which is an interesting one for fantasy football if he does come in to replace Lingard. But if we don't get the right players in, and David Moyes is relying on 1 or 2 youth players to chip in until January, then I am a little bit concerned that it might just be a little bit too much for the squad, given how much football they all played last year. and having to do another 6 months. And then when you consider the fact that 4 or 5 of them have played a summer of football at the Euros as well, yeah, I'm concerned rather than worried.
Well, I hope your worries don't come true, because it would be great to see another season for West Ham. But where do you think the team will come next season?
I think mid-table. I think we're good enough for mid-table. Part of me does wonder whether we slightly overachieved last year. As much as it was a great season, I do wonder whether we did overachieve a little bit. Although we had our injury problems, I think we were quite lucky that they came quite late on in the season, to the likes of Rice and Antonio, which then, by then a lot of the hard work had already been done, and we could have, we already got ourselves in a good position. If we can avoid those similar problems, in the first half of this coming season, then I think a top 10 finish is definitely possible. We're not going to finish in the top 6 again, but I think a nice consistent top 10 finish. But as I've already said, we're inconsistent when it comes to seasons. I think every time West Ham have a good Premier League season, they always follow it up with a bad one. And that's actually true. If you look at the actual records, we're literally up and down, up and down, up and down. So I think we'll finish top 10, though. I trust David Moyes to continue his great work.
Fingers crossed. And like I said, even during those games there right at the end of the season where there was a bit of an injury crisis, the data remained consistent. So there is a bit of positivity there, but it is a very new and different kind of season for the club ahead. Maybe related to the last question, but what would be a successful season for the team in your eyes?
Top half finish, definitely. And then a good cup run. I think domestically, that is. I think where the Europa League is concerned, as long as we don't disgrace ourselves and lose all 6 group games, then I think fans would be relatively happy. Just a chance to go on a bit of a European tour and enjoy it. We're not there just enjoy ourselves. We want to make a go of it. But I think, given how thin the squad is, I think we have to be quite realistic in terms of what we can achieve. So I think a good season is, finish top 10, put a good cup run together, maybe in the League Cup, go for the League Cup. I think it's the one that clubs like West Ham should be going for every year. And then see how we get on in the Europa League. And if we can get out of our group, great. If we don't get out of a group, but, put in a good showing, then fine. And we go again the season after next. I don't think we'll finish in the European spot next season, but I'm hoping to be proved wrong.
One final question before we wrap up. If you could choose one FPL player for the season from West Ham, who would you recommend to everybody?
Are we going differential or just
it's whatever
straight up?
You pick whoever. You can go with a differential. I mean, the choice is yours.
I mean, everyone would expect me to say someone like Souček or Antonio because they were they were the ones that were getting all the points last season. But given the pre-season that he's had and the way Moyes seems to be warming to him a little bit, I'd go for Benrahma. I think he's going to play a big role this season. And he's scored twice. The goal he scored against Brentford the other day. If anyone hasn't seen it yet, it's classic Benrahma. And he seems to just be getting a little bit more love from David Moyes. There was worries last year that he wasn't maybe David Moyes' signing, hence why he wasn't getting the game time. But it seems like in pre-season he's getting that love a little bit from him. He's getting that confidence, and I think he could have an important role to play this season.
I hope you're right, because I've got a lot of love for Benrahma. And I especially loved his goal against Celtic. The little cutback one was superb. Yep. So hopefully Saeed can have a superb season, because he's kind of been bubbling under the surface. Great data for him. But for today, that is it. James, it's been absolutely brilliant to chat to you. And I wish the podcast luck and brilliant through the season, and also West Ham as well. And maybe through the season as well, we can catch up and talk about, I'm going to say, a good season for the Hammers. But for now, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me.